All right, Taurus. So this week from Lay Vampire, you pulled Sacrifice, and you guys weren't the only ones to pull this. Renunciation, Offering, and Letting Go. But what's interesting is from Chakra Wisdom, you pulled Vanity. Now, Taurus ruling the second house, the idea of you needing to let go of possessions is a little different, but I don't so much think it's that. Letting go of the idea that that is what defines you, I think, is more appropriate here. Now, Sacrifice. The blessing says your compassion, heart, and empathy will grow as a result of the sacrifice you are now being asked to make, not by another, but by your own soul. You are strong enough to do this, but you have never known for sure because you have never put yourself to the test. Now you will, and you will see just how strong you truly are. And then working with this card basically talks about the things that you need to sacrifice for your own benefit. Now, beyond that, though, I looked at the curse, and it says, you doubt you can give this up. Perhaps you feel you are weak. Excuses have been your refuge before this time, but now you are ready. And again, the reason why I'm reading that is because of Vanity sitting here. And it's different for Taurus. But I think that, like I said, it's not so much, needing to give up possessions. For some of you, you may be downsizing, and looking at a minimalistic lifestyle rather than, having an overabundance of things. But I think more so it has to do with getting rid of the idea that, this is what defines you, or needing to get rid of those people, that look at you only based on what you have or what you do. Now, the inspiration says we all will stop. We all say we will stop when we have enough, but there's never enough. You may be looking outside yourself for validation, and that outside validation may be coming from people who look at the material as, what you're worth. Now, the personal question says, am I feeling disconnected from any people in my life? Am I growing away from limiting relationships? And then the key ideas are environmental tension, living in illusion, self-doubt, power to change, lesser companions, and empty conversations, which are the two that stick out to me the most, especially when this card shows up. It's not necessarily that these are bad people. It's just that, your vibrational level is changing compared to the other people that are around you. But when you're looking at sacrifice, there may be a little bit of difficulty in letting go of these things or, these people, or needing to have validation from people who only look at the material, as far as that being what, only defines who you are, which we all know is not the truth. All right, Taurus, here we go. Here's the energy coming through. The Seven of Cups. So maybe doing some wishful thinking here. It bothers me a little bit as far as, not choosing the best thing for yourself. When you're looking at the Seven of Cups, it's saying that you don't see what the best option is, especially if you have, multiple different options that you can choose from. There's also that feeling of getting from point A to point B and not knowing how to do that. But I kind of worry about where, the fantasy lies with the wishful thinking that is going on. Okay, so now in the past, the Ace of Cups. When you're looking at the cup energy, it is about emotions, but it also predominantly does have to do with relationships. Love and connections and emotional fulfillment. The Ace of Cups, though, also talks about the spiritual connection as well. But, what I'm looking at here is this emotional difficulty on getting to what it is that you actually want. With the Ace of Cups coming through, you are talking about a new beginning here, but how is it that you're getting there? And is this actually the best option for you? But we'll see how this is playing out. Now, in this, I like a little bit better, but again, with the Seven of Cups being the overall here, there's a little bit of worry. When you're looking at the Two of Wands, you're thinking about what action you're going to take, right? If you hold your own world in your hands, what the hell are you going to do with it? And that's kind of where the Two of Wands starts to come into play. There's no point in thinking about what you're going to do, though, if you don't have a passion for, what it is that you're choosing to do in the first place. So for me, when I look at the Two of Wands, I do think about somebody who is actually, thinking about making the right choices for themselves. But, unfortunately for some of you, it's not seeing it, or not seeing it the way that you want it, though, either. Wow. Future conditions, judgment. I kind of worry about what you feel like, what judgment you're going to face based on the choices that you make. Which is funny because, normally with judgment, first of all, it scares me just because of the review. But that's just me. But beyond that, right, it's about making amends with the past. And you're looking at second chances, new beginnings, right? It's a rebirth. And it's also about hearing the calling. But I don't know. To me, the word alone is what stuck out to me. What judgment do you think you're going to face based on the decisions that you make? Especially in regards to this here. The Ace of Cups is beautiful. I mean, personally, I like the Ace of Pentacles better, but the problem is the Seven of Cups sitting here. Your best path to follow. So, maybe instead of focusing on this Ace of Cups, what you should be focusing on is this Ace of Wands or the Ace of Staves. So basically, passionate new beginning, right? New creative ideas. They do call it the boner card, but, beyond relationships here, I think it's just about you needing to have a passionate new beginning. There's no reason why you can't have the emotional fulfillment attached to it. But again, options, right? Options. And I think, what you need to go for here is what you have a passion for. But again, I still get the feeling here that there's worry about, what judgment you're going to face, whether it's, from other people or yourself for the choices that you make. Especially if they're based in fantasy and not reality, looking at the Seven of Cups. But Spirit here is saying that there is a new beginning for you, just not the way that you're seeing it. In your environment, the Queen of Pentacles. And I love that in terms of Taurus, especially the energy that's surrounding you. So, with you as the Queen of Pentacles in your environment, you're talking about, the ability to create a comfortable, stable environment for yourself. She's just as successful as the King. But this is somebody who works really hard to get to where they're at. Now for some of you, you may be dealing with another person here. And again, Earth, right? Either way, I just feel like, the beginning that you're looking for is different than what you are envisioning, with the Seven of Cups. But I do like this in terms of the energy that's surrounding you, even with it being connected with the Two of Wands. You're going to make the right decisions for yourself. As far as, what is practical, and not based in fantasy. But still, overall here, we're still looking at the Seven of Cups. Your hopes and your fears. The Knight of Cups. Now, and that may be where this whole fear of judgment is coming through here. If you're given an offering here that isn't exactly what you had envisioned it to be, this may be something that you ultimately accept here. But, again, the judgment, right? Like, what judgment are you facing? When you're looking at the Knight of Cups, you're looking at, the emotional offering. It's either, the offering that is coming from somebody else or that you're giving. Whether or not there's acceptance here, there's still, the deciding phase that's happening with the Two of Wands. And then beyond that, though, too, when you're looking at the Knight of Cups, it's talking about following your heart, right? But not being led on, which is, again, brings me back to the Seven of Cups being overall here. And then the Eight of Swords. No. Okay, again, going back to what I was saying. You know, with the Queen of Pentacles being in your environment, you want to think practically about what it is that you're choosing to do. Okay. Right? You want to move forward with passion, definitely, when you're looking at the Ace of Wands. And again, you know, this is Spirit's advice to you. But then at the same time, it's like you have all of this coming through, right? Multiple offers and not really seeing what the best one is. Now, we can look at Judgment as you finally understanding what it is that you need to pick, right? And with the Ace of Pentacles, yes, right? Like, I agree with that totally. But what I'm looking at, you know, in terms of fearing the judgment over the choices that you make here when we're looking at the clarifiers, 1, the Star, which is fantastic to see. Hope and healing and emotional balance, especially with that damn 7 of Cups being there, right? In terms of the Lovers, this is either the major life choices that you're making or it's about the important relationship in your life. But there is fear in moving forward, looking at the 8 of Swords. There's still that mental trap that's keeping you stuck. You know, and it may be because of, again, the fear of, you know, the judgment that's going to be passed on you based on the decision that you make or the option that you finally decide to take advantage of. But what's funny is that no matter what you do, Taurus, I mean, you've got new beginnings all the way around you. You know, this stuff is not even bad. It's not bad at all. You know, the only thing to me that looks negative is the 8 of Swords coming out on this. You know, you don't want to fear moving forward based on, you know, the judgment that you may face. You know, on the other hand, you need to make the choice that you feel like you're being called to make, though, too. You know, despite whatever confusion is happening here with the 7 of Cups. You know, but then at the same time, I do still feel like for some of you, you're not seeing the offer like the way that you had envisioned it. But ultimately, it comes out to be better in the end anyway. You know, and whatever it is that you choose to do, again, with the Ace of Wands, right, especially in terms of creativity and work, you absolutely want to make the choice that you have a passion for, you know. But it's not bad. Like, none of it is bad other than the 8 of Swords. I worry about that a little bit. All right, Taurus, we're going to take a look at the soul trees to see what other messages there are for you guys. But, you know, hey, right, at least there's all these great new offers that are coming through. It's just up to you on what you do with them, you know. Play, which is important, and new growth. New growth with the Ace of Wands, absolutely, new growth happening. So now, when you're talking about the inner voice, it's important to pay attention to the inner voice, the calling, knowing what you're supposed to choose, what you're supposed to do, you know. Play. You have to play. You got to make time to play and to enjoy life. I say this all the time. There is a fine line between being overly spiritual and being overly materialistic. You have to walk in between both. Right? It's okay to tap into the spiritual side and to be spiritual. But if you negate the physical, then what was the point of being in the meat suit in the first place? You know, we were put here to experience things. So, you know, especially with Taurus, right? Enjoying the physical. So you got to play. You got to make time to play. But through that play, you know, you may see some new growth that's happening. It's not bad. All right, Taurus, we're going to take a look at the romance angels to see what messages we can get for you guys in terms of relationships and romantic feelings. Your feelings are real and worth exploring. Damn. So basically, you know, if you're having feelings for somebody, it's okay for you to start expressing that, you know, despite what you may have been through before, which is a good thing. But still, you know, I'm seeing somebody who's been through quite a bit. When you look at it, it is safe for you to love. There would be no reason for, you know, that message to be there if you hadn't been through a lot, you know, in terms of romantic relationships. But definitely, your feelings are real and worth exploring. Go ahead, right? Not bad, Taurus. Not bad, right? I mean, you've got some fantastic new beginnings here and definitely some new growth. But take some time to play, right? And pay attention to the inner voice. But don't fear judgment based on the choices that you make, though, either. Which I do feel may be important to some of you.